So we're going to do an instructional walkthrough video here on Arrow's crowding tubs. We sell them in 3 different sizes: 8 foot, 10 foot, and 12 foot, and in BudFlow and non-BudFlow. So what we have here is a BudFlow tub, and if it wasn't a BudFlow tub, you wouldn't have these. It's more or less a flat-sided tub, with which a lot of people are familiar with. It will come with a small amount of assembly already done. It will have this here L already bolted on, and then it'll have all your panels stacked here one after the other and strapped up. And it'll either be a left or a right hand tub from your dealer. And however, if, say for example, your dealer only had a left hand tub in stock and you wanted a right hand, everything can be switched over to right hand. There's in one sense there's no left or right hand tubs. Everything is completely configurable, and the instructions are in one of our pamphlets on how to do it. But essentially, this bow gets bolted on here, this crowding handle gets bolted on the other side. If it's a BudFlow, this gets put on that side. Your panel clips have to be reversed. There is a little bit to it, but it's not that difficult. So, like I say, when you get your tub, there will be a certain amount of assembly done, a small amount of assembly done. Your L will be bolted on, but I want to make a point of that this is very it's very top heavy, very unstable. So when you get your tub, you bring it to the spot where you're going to set it up, and you unstrap your panels. For sure it's a 2-man job, or a 3-man, because these panels are all 2x2 13 gauge 14 gauge sheet. It's pretty substantial. And what we always do is we have well, some pretty nice equipment here, so we're pretty spoiled, but you want some kind of a piece of equipment to support this, to prevent this from tipping over, because chances of it tipping over are very high. And if this ever landed on you, well, if nothing else, it's really going to hurt. So I just want to make a real point of that. I'll just go quickly through some of the functions, and then we'll talk about setting it up. So this is your crowd gate stop here, and it's designed in such a way that when you want to bring your crowd gate back, it pops over center, so that you can grab your gate anywhere and with one hand, 2 hand, and bring it back. And you can see along, you can see all along here, there's all these bars, and that's your stop. So when you're crowding cattle, you want to make sure you have your latch engaged, because there can be a lot of pressure on this swing gate depending on how many cattle you put in here. And you also want to keep this well maintained. You don't want to ever get to the point where this has so much friction or seized up that the spring can't overcome all the friction there. That's a safety issue there. And so if it's a BudFlow, this here, it can be latched in 2 different points. Either this here can be used as a loadout, that can go to your system. It will latch in both spots, and then this crowd gate here, latch this back to here, and this crowd gate will come right back to here. That's what we call S-flow. Or bring your crowd gate back here, make sure your latch is engaged, bring your swing gate back to here, and there you have BudFlow. Or if you didn't have BudFlow, you would just have a flat-sided tub, and this would remain closed, and you would bring your cattle in there and in and around. And this latch has a little slot there, so if you want to keep it disengaged, so you're not holding it all the time, that's fine. So we'll talk about setup now. All our panels are connected, starting at the frame and connected to each other with bolts. There's 3 bolts per connection, and that's it's a little bit more work setting up than our old style tubs. We're just pin style, but we went away from that because there's so much slop and so much noise. For example, if you want to, right now, if I stand on the very end of my swing gate, there's virtually no flex. This is like one solid unit. But when you'll have a box of hardware, and in your hardware, you'll notice these long carriage, 1/2-inch carriage head bolts, and there will be some in there that are formed or are bent like that, and that's for your first connection, because you come off of here 90 degrees, then you start your curve, so your 2 connections are kicked a bit like that. So that's what those bent bolts are for. So then you bolt up this, and something that's very important is to keep everything loose. Like, only thumb your nuts on just enough to hold, because if you start tightening up as you go, you're sure to run into trouble quite quickly. So keep everything loose, put your bolts in there, come to your next panel, and because these are ring rolled, and at the end of your when you're rolling tube, at the end you always have what we call a tail. So the end section tends to be a little bit of a straight section. So the 2 tubes, they're not necessarily a perfect arc. They can have a slight kick there. And so what I usually do is, when you're putting on your next panel, you can just swing it out a little bit like that. Whatever it takes to easily put that bolt through that connection. Just thumb up your nut and then just pull it into line, dropping your joiner bar, and you just go 1, 2, you just continue on until you've got them all in. Just an important point, if it's a BudFlow, when you're setting down this L, it's good to remember to put this bar down at the same time. Otherwise, what's going to happen is, when you're going to get your tub all installed, you're going to have to try to lift your whole tub up to try to get that bottom connecting bar in. So it's just it's good to put that in before, when you first set your L down. And then this here 3E panel has 1 connecting bar, you can see, from there to there, and it just drops in. That's quite simple to do. And then there's 2 heavy-duty hitch pins that go into this connection here, and then panel clips on the outside to connect your lead up to. Everybody's got a concrete pad they're sitting on, just like this. It's just sit on gravel, so when you're setting it up, there's a little bit of forgiveness there. And then you'll notice there's a stay here, but there's not a stay there, and that's to give you more freedom from when you're working outside the tub. You're not you know, crashing your arms so many times. And then this here, it's I worry that it's not used as much as it could be. So this is a complete system we've got set up here, but we have the ability, and it makes it really nice, we have the ability to connect our pins directly to the outside of our tub wherever you wish. So no more baler twine. You got a good, solid, safe connection there. And we have in-house designers, and they can help you design all this. But if you buy this, this is actually just our no-gap panel clip. But if you buy it and you buy a full system and you're connecting to the outside of your tub, you have to make sure when you set up, this is your first panel you've set up, this is your second panel you've set up. Then when you come to here, you've got to, when you're lining this panel up, you have to feed these clips, you have to put these clips on first before you put this panel on. Because if you bolt this panel on and then you're gonna, later on when you go to put these panel clips on, you're not going to be able to put them in. You got to put them in first before you put this next panel on, and then it allows you to have a nice solid seamless connection there. And then like I say, you start with your first panel. Your first 3 bolts are bent bolts. You bring your second panel in, put your bolts on, being mindful that everything has to be loose. You got your second set of bolts done, your second panel sitting in. Then you take your joiner bar, and you're almost sure to be out a little bit here. Everything's loose. You shift it a little bit to drop in your joiner bar, and then bring your next panel in, put your bolts in, keep everything loose, shift your panels to line up for your next joiner bar, and just continue around. If it's only a half tub, you've only got 1 more joiner bar. If it's a BudFlow, you've got 2 more panels. The cattle enter, go around, and as we know, those cows, when they get into this corner, they're going to realize that they can't go out, and it doesn't take that long. It takes about between 3 and 7 seconds for an animal to realize that it can't go out, and then they'll turn around, and then you need to be, if you want good flow, you got to be on the ball. But I'll just make a point of, when you're bringing these cattle up into the tub, we've said before that low stress cattle handling is not necessarily low pressure cattle handling. So when these cattle are going, you got that flow going, keep it going. Don't let them cattle stall. So the cattle enter into the tub here, and as they enter and start to turn, you grab the swing gate, you latch right there. Them cattle are over there by about now, and they realize that they can't get out, so they start to turn. Work your crowd gate with your crowd gate latch engaged for safety, and then you just start working them cattle. And the key is to obviously try to get one going, and then you'll get that following behavior. And once one goes, the rest usually follow quite nicely. And coming right around like that. Crowd them right up to there if necessary. And if you got little calves and you got them kind of spinning in there, you can further tighten it up by taking your swing gate and latching it right there. And then it's no wider than the alley, and you've got good control of them there. But like I said before, how I prefer to run a tub, I prefer actually not to call it a crowding tub at all, but a pass-through pen or an all-in, all-out facility. And what I mean by that is, it's nice to have your alley matched with your tub. So you bring in a batch, you turn them around, you get that flow going, that following behavior happening, and you empty them right out. Clean out your tub, and then you're ready for another batch. So another way you can configure this is, we got BudFlow configuration, or we got what we call Asphalt configuration. So that's what this this swing gate is latched. Bring your crowd gate around. Your handle is disengaged and flat against the swing gate. And then the way we have this set up here right now is, we got it set up so that we can load out of this gate out into our trailers. And so your cattle come in, same thing, you got to keep that flow moving. Those cattle are, once they're going, keep that flow going. Get them in here, and instead of coming like this and turning back on themselves, it's more of a continuous flow. Like I'm thinking, if you were loading up liners or something, usually 17 fats at a time per deck, you'd bring them in, try to get that flow going, and right on and out.